Before we start with today and with our webinar for today and our uh, very valuable and special guest, let me briefly start introducing to you about CoReach. CoReach, we are the first coaching firm and a platform in Saudi Arabia. We are a group of passionate advocates for bringing the human elements back to the workplaces. We thrive by enabling the we culture in organization through providing a different approach to thinking, communicating, working, and living. As a firm, we collaborate with businesses to help them highlight their purpose and lay foundation of a we culture that develops their workforce at all levels, from the C-suite all the way to every level, and help them create a humane and psychologically safe space. As a platform, we collaborate with individuals to help them elevate their self-awareness and lead their way towards their personal and professional growth. Believing in the power of teams and psychological safety, we let go of our hierarchical system and turned CoReach into an agile teal organization, becoming the first company to implement holacracy management system in Saudi Arabia. Every year, the holy month of Ramadan, we give back to our community by offering daily talks, webinars, workshops that embraces different values. We call it Zakat Ilm, which means the charity of knowledge. We decided that our theme for this year is humanity because with all that is happening in the world, something about this pandemic brought us back to our roots of humanity. And welcome everyone. Tonight we are welcoming with a sincere gratitude Dr. Stein. And Dr. Stein is a clinical psychologist and the founder and executive chairman of Multi-Health System, a leading assessment and a behavior analytics company. His work has been featured in numerous newspapers, TV shows, radio programs, podcasts, webinars, and magazines. He shares information on emotional intelligence and hardiness with audience around the world. We welcome Dr. Steve and Multi-Health System, our dear partners. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, Dr. Steve. We are really thrilled and happy and very much looking forward for your valuable knowledge that you're going to share with us tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Reem. It's great being with you, and it's great having you as a partner, and it's great to be sharing information with everyone today, or this evening for you, I guess. It's great to be doing these. I've been doing a number of these in the last little while. There seems to be a lot of interest in these topics as we go through this challenging time. And I wish I was there with you in person, that we could actually interact. It makes it a challenge to have to do this one-on-one with everybody spread out all over the place. I'm going to be presenting with slides, which unfortunately means I won't be able to see the chat. But if you have questions, if there are things you want to know, please put them in the chat, and we'll have time to deal with them after. Reem will collect all the questions, and we'll have a discussion. I really enjoy the interactive part of these presentations. But nevertheless, I have a lot of information to share, and let's get that started, if I can. And I guess the first thing is, of course, to wish you blessings for Salam for Ramadan and get ourselves into today's topic. And today's topic, as you know, we'll be talking about emotional intelligence and the idea of hardiness that I've been working on in the last little while. And I want to share with you both some practical knowledge, some research, and some suggestions, some skills that maybe will be useful for you during these times and maybe during other times in the future as well. I guess the first thing we have to really say is just be in awe of how events can change the world. I mean, 4 weeks ago, who would have thought that this would be our world, that we'd all be confined to isolation and living the way that we're living? It's just unbelievable how much has changed, and all the different elements of the change and how it's affected all of us. And the interesting thing is that it's affected us all, or many people, in different ways. And we'll explore a little bit about that, why maybe some people seem to be adapting better to the situation, and some people seem to be more challenged or having a lot more difficulties during the situation. And we really have to understand, you know, in order to get through this, experiences like this, difficult times, it's really all about how we respond to the changes that are around us that help determine how successfully we'll be dealing with these situations. So, you know, things will happen around us, and they always will, and sometimes they're good things and sometimes they're bad things. But it's our response, our ability to deal with those situations that really enable us to go forward in life and be successful in the things that we want to do. What I'm going to present today, I'm going to present in two parts. The first part I refer to as strategic. These are the skills and adaptations that maybe takes you a bit of time to develop and to grow, but I want you to be aware of them, to know the direction and why they're important. And the two major areas that I've been working in, emotional intelligence for at least the last almost 30 years, and hardiness, which is a newer one. We'll talk about them and why they're important and why they can provide you with kind of the strategies to help you deal with times like this. And the second part of my presentation will deal more with tactics. Tactics are, what are the things you can do? You can do right now. You can go home. You could do tomorrow. You can take with you and implement right away to help you cope with what we're going through, pandemics and situations like this. So those are the two sort of components. And I want to start with the more strategic components of things. And as I mentioned, emotional intelligence is an area that we helped pioneer many years ago. And, you know, at the time, people laughed. They didn't know what it was. It didn't make sense to anyone. But as we know today, emotional intelligence is regarded as probably one of the most important aspects of leadership. And today, everyone around the world is familiar with the idea of emotional intelligence. So what's happened is the nature of what it is and what it means has kind of evolved since we started 30 years ago. But, you know, there are different definitions that seem to be out there now, but they share three things in common. So I'll start with, you know, no matter what school or definition of emotional intelligence you come from, they all share these three basic components. And I'll go through those just to make sure that we're all on the same page when we're talking about emotional intelligence. The first thing that emotional intelligence means is it's our ability to identify emotions or emotional information in both ourselves and in other people. So it's important that when we feel a certain way, we're angry or we're happy or we're upset, we understand what that feeling is. For some people, they're not very good at differentiating how they feel. All they know is good and bad. And that's not helpful, especially if you want to be able to deal with your feelings. You have to really be able to identify them, because once you identify exactly what you're feeling, you can deal with it. You know where it comes from. So if I feel, let's say, anxious right now, is it because I'm appearing before such a large group of people? Or is it because maybe I had something that didn't agree with me for lunch? So you can see that what I do to deal with it is going to be very different depending on the nature of what it is that I'm feeling. So identifying our own emotions is a real important step. And what we found, and again, we've tested millions of people over the years for emotional intelligence. So I'm just summarizing a lot of this research. What we found is that people who are high in emotional intelligence are really good at this ability to identify their emotions. And there's ways that can help you and improve you to get there. Some people use meditation and mindfulness and other techniques. But as well as that, it's important to be able to identify emotions in other people. So people who are high in emotional intelligence can read the people around them. They can see when someone they're interacting with is upset or is happy or how they feel. They have that ability to read other people's emotions quite well. So this is what I would call the first component that all the different theories of emotional intelligence seem to share. The second component is that ability to manage emotional information in yourself and in others. So once you've identified your own emotions, then you're much better able to manage them. So it may be that you're angry about something, and maybe you want to be angry in order to motivate yourself to get someone to change what they're doing. But someone who's high in emotional intelligence is able to manage that anger well. So it's not destructive, for example, it's not overblown. So people high in emotional intelligence know how to manage their emotions. They can use the emotions they need to use in particular situations. But as well, they can manage other people's emotions. People sometimes ask me, well, how can I manage somebody else's emotions? I'm not inside their head. I can't control them. Well, what we think about there is that you are able to influence other people's emotions. I'm sure there's people in your life that you can think of that influence the way you feel. They can say the wrong thing to you and get you very angry, or they can comfort you when you're upset. They can make you feel better. And in that way, people who are high in emotional intelligence are able to manage not only their own emotions, but they're very good at managing the emotions of people who are around them, to get them into the right state, whether it's to calm them down or to get them motivated and excited about something. These are all a part of the second pillar of emotional intelligence. And the third pillar we talk about is the ability to focus emotions or emotional energy in order to get things done. And this is an area I've been spending some time on the last several years. We've been studying people in high performance situations. So we've been looking at Olympic athletes, professional athletes, performers, professional musicians, people in the entertainment world, because they have to sometimes go out and perform in front of what could be millions of people, even though they may not be feeling good or whatever. What are the techniques they use? What could we learn from these high performers? In the book I wrote recently, Hardiness, we profiled some of these people in the entertainment industry and sports. One of the people we profiled was a young woman, Canadian woman, by the name of Bianca Andreescu. She won the US Open as well as the Canadian Open. It was unbelievable. She's 19 years old. It was her first time playing in the US Open, and she defeated Serena Williams. She made it right to the top. It was an amazing feat. The audience was against her. They were New Yorkers. They wanted the American player to win, not the Canadian. To see that match was just incredible, how someone could be that strong and continue to play so well. So we had the opportunity. I worked with her coaches and was able to test them in emotional intelligence and hardiness, and to ask them about the techniques they use in training a world-class athlete. And we learned a lot about that we wrote about in the book, how they are able to focus emotions to get things done using things like visualization and other techniques. And why I think it's important, it's not just for athletes and performers. You can use these techniques because you have to get things done, whether you have to do a presentation in front of your work group, or whether you have projects to complete and you don't feel like working on it. How do you get yourself motivated to do what you have to do? So by studying these high performance people, we've learned a lot about how we can be more motivated and get more things done. So over the years, as I mentioned, we've assessed and examined millions of people literally around the world in terms of emotional intelligence. And we've assessed such a wide range. We've assessed everything on the one end of the world: people who are homeless, people who are having mental health challenges, people involved in abusive relationships, people in poverty. We have a lot of people that we've looked at on the one end of the scale. And on the other hand, we've had the opportunity to assess people who are extremely high performers, CEOs of extremely large organizations, as I mentioned, successful athletes, people who are top salespeople, people who excel in a variety of different areas. So we've been able to look at the role that concepts like emotional intelligence play out in these kinds of people. And I'll just summarize for you some of the factors that we've learned that really differentiate these high performers, these people who seem to be successful at whatever it is they take on. For example, one thing we find is they tend to be very self-aware, not like this kitten I'm showing you right here. They're self-aware in that they can see themselves as they really are. They're what we often refer to as authentic. They know that they don't blow themselves up. They're not. They don't puff themselves up to something that they're not. They know their strengths and they know their challenges, and they often want to develop or work on those challenges to improve themselves. But they're very level-headed, self-aware, understand themselves, know themselves quite well. Another thing we find people who are high in emotional intelligence is that they're very good at expressing themselves. They're very clear, and you know how they feel about things. People talk about how bad it is to work for a boss who never lets you know how they think or feel about things. You hand in a piece of work, you complete a project, and they don't give you any indication of whether you did a good job or you did a bad job or there's things you could improve. It's very difficult to have to work for somebody who's not at all emotionally expressive. You can't read them. You don't know where they're coming from. We'd much rather work with people and for people where we understand, we know what they think and feel, and they express themselves well, so that we know if we're on the right track or if we're going down the wrong track. So highly emotional people are really good at self-expression, and that's both verbally and non-verbally. You can read them. They're in sync. What they say and what they mean and the body language seems to all fall together. It's again, a form of part of authenticity. Another thing we find about people high in emotional intelligence is they have very good interpersonal skills. They know how to initiate relationships, and they know how to maintain relationships, and they know how to work with relationships. They know how to work with other people when they need to get things done, when they help others. They know they have people they can call on for various things. So being high in emotional intelligence really enables you to cultivate relationships and work well with other people. Another important skill is they're adaptable. And when was this ever more important than today with COVID-19, where we've all had to basically change our lives on a dime? That was like almost overnight that we had to adapt to everything. Many of us are now working digitally. We're not in day-to-day or in-person contact with the people that we usually work with. We spend more time with our partners than we used to before this. Our whole lives have changed just in the last 4 weeks or so into ways that we never would have thought or expected. People who we found who are high in emotional intelligence are adapting better to this change than those who have challenges in emotional intelligence. They're used to change. They actually will often embrace change, and we'll talk about some of the tactics that are used in helping people become more comfortable with this kind of change. People high in emotional intelligence also make good decisions. There's a lot of research over the years, some that we've done and other people have done, that looked at decision-making and the role of emotions. So some people think, oh, when I make decisions, I'm completely logical. I get emotions out of the way. It's all about logic and rational decision-making. Well, the surprise is that that is not the most effective way to make decisions. There's some interesting research. One study carried out at Harvard University where they used fMRIs. They were actually monitoring people's brains while they asked them to solve a business problem, to come up with a business solution. Something that you would think would be very logical and rational. But in the end, when they looked at the various solutions that came out and had them rated independently, they found that the best solutions came from those people who used emotion as part of coming up with the idea or the solution. The ones who used no emotion, or the ones who overused their emotion, did not come out with great solutions. And they could actually see the emotional parts of the brain lit up when they were trying to solve the problem. to validate this. It's interesting when you think about it, because people who have complex jobs, complex kinds of work, you think of a neurosurgeon or people who do very complex analyses. A lot of times those people will encounter a situation, the doctor will see a patient, and they'll know within a couple minutes what seems to be wrong. And the reason is because they use what we know of as intuition. And what intuition is that feeling, and the feeling comes from having been there before. And these highly experienced people have seen these cases so many times that it's like a snapshot. They can get a very quick, intuitive picture of what's going on. And that involves emotion. They get a feeling about how it is that they've seen this before. So people high in emotional intelligence are tend to be very good at decision making. They've even done research on people who work in the stock markets and found that their ability to buy and sell at the right times is heavily influenced by their emotional ability. They don't get too excited and sell too early, or they're not too patient or laid back that they miss the right time to sell. So emotion has a very important place, a very important role to play when we're making decisions. And of course, times like this, times that are stressful, people high in emotional intelligence manage stress better than those who aren't high. They have better tactics or techniques or methods of getting through stressful situations. And we'll spend a bit of time on how that is. What are some of the factors that lead into that? The model we use, the EQI model, encompasses these various factors that I mentioned about. There's 5 basic parts to the puzzle and 15 specific areas within. So the first one, of course, is the awareness of ourselves. And when we look at people's awareness of themselves, we look at it at different levels. So we look at it at the micro level, which is, I want to be aware of how I feel right now. I'm feeling happy, sad, anxious, frustrated, very micro level of my feelings. But we also look at a much larger level. We look at what we call self-actualization. How do I feel generally in life? Am I on the right path? Am I doing the right work that I want to do? Am I happy in my relationship? Like, where am I in life? So we look at the whole range from the micro to the macro in terms of our self-awareness. The second area that we look at is how we express ourselves. And you'll see one of the factors in here is assertiveness. There was a time in North America where people could civilly talk about politics. That time is not so much the same today, but a number of years ago, you could be a Republican or a Democrat, and you could still like each other and have a discussion about things. In Canada, it would be a conservative or a liberal party, and you'll be able to discuss things well. And being assertive means being able to express your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs in a constructive way. We need a lot of work in the world today in terms of building these skills up again. But people who are assertive, again, it relates to authenticity and expressing your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, but not offending or insulting the other person when you do that. And that's part of what we find in emotional intelligence, that ability to build bridges, to work with various people, even people who are different from yourselves. Then we get to that interpersonal aspect, the ability to develop and maintain social relationships. Another area we find really important. And one of the standout factors here, if we look at the micro level, we look at empathy, the ability to read other people, to be able to see where they're coming from emotionally. And that's, empathy is that ability to read those people. The other more macro level has to do with social responsibility. And social responsibility is our ability to do good for the world. It's a similar skill, but what we want to do there is we want to make a difference in the world. We want to do good for the world. So we have that whole range of developing and maintaining social relationships. The next area that we look at is decision making. And again, as I mentioned before, emotions are a very important part of making decisions. Whether it's being impulsive, where we make decisions too quickly because we're over emotional, or again, we're too patient. We wait too long and we don't make decisions. We're afraid to make decisions, or we choose not to make our decisions. So these are all, a part of the decision-making process. Also, what we call reality testing, our ability to see situations as they are and not as we wish they were, as we imagine they were. People who are good at making decisions are good at reading situations, seeing what's really in front of them and not seeing them as they wish they were or as something else. And then finally, the area of stress management, that ability to cope with challenges, which requires things such as flexibility or adaptability, as I mentioned. And it also requires optimism. It requires us to have an understanding that, while what we're going through is quite a difficult time, we will get over it. We will pass this. We've been through bad situations before. We've been through swine flu. We've been through SARS. There were a number of pandemics in the past, and somehow we managed to get through them. It's obviously more difficult for some people than others, but that ability to be optimistic is something we find holds in people who are high in emotional intelligence. Now, I want to introduce you to a slightly different concept, which I think is really important, but fits in to where we're taking this discussion. And that's the idea of a mindset. I don't know if many of you are familiar with this yet. The idea of mindset was developed by Carol Dweck. She's a psychology professor at Stanford University, and she developed this around 25 years ago is when she began, but there's been tons of research done in this area since that time. But I'll give you an idea of what it is and how it was developed and why it's important. Carol was studying young children, preschool children, and her interest was in studying failure in children, how they deal with failure. So she was doing research where she'd give these puzzles to these kids and would give them increasingly more and more difficult puzzles until they failed. And then she would see what they did when they got frustrated, right? So typically the kids would get angry or frustrated or not want to do it anymore or whatever. But in her research, she noticed that there was a percentage of these kids, maybe 10, maybe 15 or so percent, that no matter how difficult the puzzle was, they were never frustrated. In fact, they seemed to enjoy it. They would say to her, wow, this is good. Do you have any more puzzles? And they would try and learn from it. Even when they were making mistakes, they would take the difficulties that they were having and try and apply it and learn from it and want to keep going and do more puzzles. So this got her into the idea that, people approach difficulties in one of two ways, in two different ways. And she labeled these two different mindsets. The first one she called a fixed mindset. And these relate to ability. So it's our ability to do math or to perform music or to do language skills. So some people go around saying, when they get something that's too hard, they give up right away. When I start to fail at something, that means I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I feel that I'm either good at something or I'm not good at it. These are people who feel that their skills are predetermined. I'm not good at math, so I'm staying away from math. I'm not going to try any math skills. I just give up. I'll stick to the things that I know or that I feel comfortable with. That's what she labeled basically as a fixed mindset. On the other hand, there are people that had what she called a growth mindset. Growth mindset look at the world in a very different way. They say failure is really an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to learn. And they say that, when I have challenges, I love challenges because then I can do something even better the next time. And there's no limit to what I can learn. I may not be the strongest math person, but I enjoy math problems and I learn. I do better at it each time I try. There's other characteristics that go along with these mindsets. For example, growth mindset people welcome feedback, whereas fixed mindset people don't want to hear about it. I don't care what you think of me. I don't want to learn from what you think of me. I'm just happy with what I know about myself. People with a growth mindset say, Please tell me, what do you think of it? What have you learned about me? What can I improve? What can I do better at? How do you see me? They love to try new things. So if you get the idea, these are two very different ways of approaching the world. And again, as I mentioned, over the years, there's been a great deal of research sort of validating this way of viewing the world that people have, and also the effects that it has in their ability to perform in many different tasks. So just summarizing that, the growth mindset are people who accept mistakes, they love challenges, they like new things, and they're inspired by other people's success. If I see that you're successful in something and I have a growth mindset, I'm happy for you. If I have a fixed mindset, I'm jealous. Very different way of approaching people and the world. And then on the other hand, people with that fixed mindset, their aptitudes is unchangeable. My abilities won't change. I am what I am. They don't want new challenges. They avoid failing things. They give up right away before they fail. That's the way they see the world. Now, it's interesting, as I learned about Carol's work, I thought about it and reflected in my own life. You know, when I was growing up and I was young in elementary school and high school and even in college, I loved music. In fact, I played the saxophone. And I loved playing the saxophone. I'd studied music. I played in the school bands. I was in the university marching band. It was such a part of my life. But by the time I graduated from college, I stopped and I thought about it. And I said, you know, I'm never going to be a great saxophone player. I'm not going to be like Stan Getz or Jerry Mulligan or, you know, John Coltrane or any of the great saxophone players. I don't think I'm ever going to get any better at this. And I just stopped playing. I just gave up on music and went on and became a psychologist and lived in a completely different world. 30 odd years later, I was with some friends and the topic got around to music, and something just struck me that I really missed something that I enjoyed so much of my childhood or growing up. I missed music. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to try it again. And I went and I dug up my old saxophone and started playing again. I got a teacher, got up to speed. And for the last number of years, I've been playing again. In fact, I'm now playing in several bands and I have a saxophone quartet. And if you want to hear a little bit of what we play. That's a little snippet from my quartet. And that song, if you recognize it at all, is When I'm 64 from the Beatles. And the importance of that, significance of that, is that it's never too old to learn a new skill or pick up an old skill. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can still excel at it. And what I've learned is that it's not important if I'm a great saxophone player. That's not my purpose. My purpose is to enjoy music and is to play at whatever level I'm at, and I enjoy it. And I've had an additional bonus from doing this. We play at seniors' homes and residences. In my bands, we entertain people who never get the opportunity to see live music because they're in homes and in treatment centers and hospitals. So we bring a new life to these people, and some of them are so excited. It brings tears to their eyes to hear the music that they grew up with in the 1940s or late 1930s from the big bands, from Tommy Dorsey, from Benny Goodman, when we play that music. So it's, having a growth mindset, changing your mindset to a more of a growth mindset can have all kinds of benefits that you don't even expect. Sometimes we close ourselves off from things because we're looking at the wrong path, when there's many other paths that we can take and we can benefit from, but we just have to open that vision and be a little more, susceptible to looking at it. So in reality, with, again, summarizing 25 years of research from Dweck and many of her colleagues, people obviously aren't just one or the other, just growth or fix, but there is a mixed group. Whereas you may think, well, I'm interested in music and growing in that way, but I don't think I can grow in math, or I don't think I can grow in languages or something. So people tend to fall somewhere in this continuum in their ability to see the world, to sort of live their life looking at the world. So this has been a real important development in terms of people's ability to navigate the world and how they see their abilities. What's happened subsequently is a group of researchers at Yale University took that idea and applied it to stress. Said, you know what, if we looked at that kind of mindset concept, and not just with abilities, our ability to do things like math skills, but our ability to navigate the world in terms of stress. And they did some really interesting research. This particular study actually came out of Harvard University. Aliot Crum and her colleagues, they did actually a number of different studies. I'm just going to present you this one because it was really kind of interesting. What they did was they went to a major hotel chain and they got permission to do research with the maids, the room attendants, people who clean the rooms in the hotel. And they were able to gather 84 of them to be part of their study. And what they did is they divided them into two groups. They took half the maids, just almost half of them, 40 of them, and put them in what they call a control group. And they spent between half an hour and 45 minutes with them, giving them a bit of a presentation, a talk about stress. And what they said to them is, you know, the work that you do every day, cleaning rooms, making beds, cleaning the bathrooms, that's really hard work. You've got to be careful. That's stressful work. And, you know, you've got to do things like exercise to stay healthy. You've got to look after yourself, eat well, sleep, all the things you would tell somebody ordinarily who's going through or dealing with a stressful situation. So they gave them this pep talk for the 30 or 45 minutes, and then they were done. The other group of about 44 room attendants, they gave a bit of a different talk to. What they said to them is, you know, the work that you do all day, carrying all that cleaning equipment, making those beds, cleaning those washrooms, the work that you do every day is actually exercise. You get an incredible amount of exercise in the course of a day in terms of what you're doing at work. In fact, we measured the amount of exercise you get, and it actually exceeds what the Surgeon General recommends for daily activity. And not only that, but, you know, rich people pay a lot of money to join gyms to exercise, and they don't even get as much exercise as you get. So you're really lucky in the kind of work that you do, that you get to use yourself physically and exercise the way you do. So again, that was about a 45-minute presentation or discussion about the work they do, and then they let them all go back and do the regular work for the next 4 weeks. They measured them after 4 weeks in a number of ways. First, they measured their perception of exercise, the way they thought about their lives and what they did. And as you can see in the dark lines, the ones in the informed group all believed that they were getting more exercise. The ones in the lighter line were either the same, there was no reason for them to see any change in how much exercise they were getting, or even went down the amount of exercise they saw at work. They felt that they were not getting exercise, they were just getting stress. So they changed their mindset essentially, where the one group, because of what they were told, very, very quick intervention, felt that they were getting lots of exercise and were more enthusiastic about their work. But they went further than that in terms of what they measured. They actually measured things like their weight. And they found that the informed group lost an average of 2 pounds, whereas there was no weight and sometimes weight gains in the other group. They found there were changes in their systolic blood pressure by 10 points. They had lowered it. They also were healthier as measured by their body fat percentage, their body mass, and their waist-hip ratio. So they actually demonstrated physiological improvements, physiological changes, simply as a result of thinking differently about the work that they do. Now, I'm just presenting you this one study, but there are many studies that they've carried out in different situations, work situations and others, that lead to the same kind of finding, that when we change our mindset about stress, there can be significant effects in our lives. So that leads to the book that my colleague and I released just before this pandemic. We had no idea a pandemic was coming, but we wrote a book on a topic called Hardiness. And I'll tell you how that came about. Paul Bartone is my co-author. And he had been working in the area of hardiness for maybe 25, 28 years. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But what do we mean by hardiness? Well, hardiness essentially is your ability to deal directly with stressful situations. We think of it as a mindset, just as I was talking about the stress mindset. We see a hardiness mindset. It's a way in which people approach their world, see the world. Now, my co-author, Paul Bartone, is a retired colonel from the U.S. military. He taught at West Point. He taught leadership at West Point for a number of years, had a long career in the military, and had published research in the area of hardiness for, as I mentioned, over 20 years. When we met several years back, the problem I saw was a lot of this research, which is amazing research, is not known to the public. It's published in military journals or psychological journals, and it's not really accessible to most people. And that's when we decided to get together and make this research more accessible and the effects of it more accessible to people in the general workplace, the general population. The way this work started, when Paul was a graduate student way back in the University of Chicago, more than 25 years ago, they were working on a project in some organizations where they were studying stress in the workplace. And they were looking at a number of executives. Now, at that time, if you remember, if you're around at that time, remember what was going on, there was a lot of mergers and acquisitions in the telecommunications industry. As a result of those, some of those mergers, a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people were put out of work. And in the middle of the research Paul and his colleagues were involved in, many of these people lost their jobs. What happened was, since they were already looking at measuring these people, they started interviewing them and seeing how they managed as a result of this. And many of them, as you would expect, were angry or frustrated or depressed or didn't know what to do with themselves. But there was another group of them, maybe 10 or 15% of them, who thought completely differently about the situation. They said, you know what, this may be an opportunity to open a new chapter of my life. Or, you know, I was always interested in maybe opening up a bakery, or, you know, doing something, you know, completely different from what I'm doing here. So those people embraced the change, even though it was a devastating and difficult financially and emotionally. They thought this was a great opportunity. And that led to the study of hardiness. What is this mindset that differentiated these two groups of people? And over the years, again, many research studies, they came up with three things that differentiated these people. We call them the 3 C's. The first one is what we refer to as challenge. These people see change, whether it's good or bad, as novelties, much like those kids I was telling you about. Wow, this is interesting. They look at today's situation, oh, a pandemic, look, we have to stay home. Well, this is interesting. How can I deal with this? What can I do? How can I change my life? What can I do about this? So they see their life through the lens of challenge. Everything that happens to them, they look for, what is the brighter side of this? How can I learn from this? The second thing that differentiated these people was the area of control. These people understand what they can control versus what they can't control, and they manage that very well. So we can't control this pandemic. We can't control the COVID-19 virus. There's nothing we can do about it. We can't even control the people running around our neighborhoods who may have the virus. But what we can control is our reaction to the virus. We can self-isolate. We can social distance. We can sneeze into our sleeves. There's a lot of things within our control. How do we manage those things that we control and not get overly upset or concerned about those things out there that we really don't have control over? Again, people high in hardiness manage that really well. And the third area, third C, is commitment. People who are high in commitment are engaged, they're purposeful. They have a purpose of living, they have a purpose in life. They see that there's a mission that they're involved in. Whether it's at work or at home or socially, these are people who think there are things I have to accomplish. And it's really interesting. I was reviewing, there were some psychologists who looked at the area of depression and treatments and tactics for treating depression, especially at times like this. And they looked at, they reviewed hundreds of articles trying to understand what were the best tactics for dealing with being depressed. And what they came up with as one of the most effective tactics for people with depression was just to sit down for half an hour with a paper and pencil and to try and figure out or write out your purpose in life. Write down what you see as your purpose in life and how you're going to achieve it. And that had a long-lasting effect in people with moderate depression, in their ability to move forward and to change their mood and their lives. So being purposeful, we find, is really important. And that's part of the commitment component of hardiness. So if I put all this together for you, we have a bit of a framework to help you really understand it. So all of us have our very basic core beliefs and values that we operate from as we navigate the world, right? We have very strong values that we have. We have values and beliefs that are the core of our being. When we overlay that with our mindset, so we approach the world with a growth or a fixed mindset. We approach things as saying, wow, that's interesting. I could learn from that, or I'm staying away from that. That's too hard for me, or things are stressful. I don't want to go near them, or yeah, that might be stressful, but what can I learn from that? Let me experience that. The next level would be our emotional intelligence, our emotional skills. So we lay over that our ability to understand how we feel about things and to navigate the world and to deal with other people and pull it all together. On top of that are our technical skills and competencies, our ability to be good at to be an accountant or to be a surgeon or to be a carpenter or whatever it is that we do. We have these technical skills. And when we put this all together, that helps determine our impact, our success, our performance in the world. We put all these skills together and we're ready to take on the world. So that's basically how these are the sort of the strategic parts of our being that I see working to make us effective. So now I want to switch into the tactics. What can we do right now? How can we deal with the situation that we're currently in? How do we understand it and how do we deal with it? Well, the first thing I want to point out is the importance of leadership. One of the things that we've learned about leadership is that our leaders show emotions, and the emotions of our leaders is contagious. We've learned this through a lot of research in the workplace, as well as understanding political leadership. And we see this probably around the world. You've been watching leaders, whether it's in the United States, whether it's in the UK, your own leaders. We've been seeing how leaders have reacted to this situation. And that reaction has really had a strong impact within each of the countries that we look at. And we can see that. In the United States, for example, Dr. Fauci we see as being one of the people who stands out in terms of leadership in his ability to be authentic, to be believable, to tell people the way he sees things from both his medical background and his practical. He doesn't just accept any data. He analyzes, he tells you what he thinks of it. So we can see that certain leaders stand out in times like this. And we get some of our own feelings are through our leaders. We catch some of it, almost like you catch a virus or catch a cold. So that's important to understand. Another thing that's really important for us to understand is that we have to face the reality of the situation. When this started, there were people I was dealing with, business leaders, who just denied it. It's not important. That's not going to affect us at all, on the one hand. And then on the other hand, I dealt with people who were so scared they were locking themselves up in their homes way before the lockdown began. So, it's important for us to acknowledge what's going on. I mean, this is a difficult experience, and it's long and it's drawn out. It's hurting a number of us financially. We have to accept that. People are getting sick. People are dying. It's a painful situation. So I think it's really important that we acknowledge that. We have to be upfront with that and accept the fact that we're going through a difficult time. We're going through a difficult experience. And we can't really, put rose-colored glasses over this thing. We have to accept it for what it is and then take it from there. What are we finding in this period of isolation? It's important for us to listen to the people around us, to hear where they're coming from. Many people are getting frustrated being in isolation, even with their own families. We have to listen to our kids. Our kids can be difficult for me. It's my grandkids, but they're not living with me. But I understand it can be difficult and challenging for them in this situation. For our partners, getting along with each other, we have to just take it a bit easy and listen to the people around us. What's really, behind the aggravations that are going on, not just explode when they don't put the cap back on the toothpaste or something. We have to be a little more patient and listen to what's going on with people during times like this. In addition, it's helpful to ask questions, to understand what it is that's upsetting them. Is it the isolation? Is it not seeing your friends? To get a bit of understanding of what's going on with the people around us. If we could maybe understand it more, that can maybe diffuse some of the bad feelings or make people feel a little better about what's going on. It also demonstrates to them that you're paying attention to them, that they matter. We often take people for granted that are close to us in these kinds of difficult situations. But we have to sometimes stop and pay attention to the other person, find out what's really going on, what's bothering them, what do they like and what do they dislike. And once again, I want to stress the fact that emotions are contagious. So if you're at home with your kids, for example, they're going to pick up your feelings. If you're afraid and scared and having difficulty dealing with the pandemic, it'll reflect in terms of your kids. So it's important for you to learn to be brave and to face the situation that we're in. Show people around you that you care. Do things that demonstrate that you care. Sometimes it's the little things that count. You have to be nicer to people. You have to just put out a little more, try a little harder when we're in this kind of a situation. Again, I mentioned the importance of control. You have to take control by following the advice of the health experts that are advising us. We have to do the social distancing, but not be, we have to be socially relational with each other. Not distancing doesn't mean it's a physical distancing, not an emotional distancing. So while we don't get close to other people, we have to have the emotional connection with the people that we care about. And we follow the guidelines in terms of how to deal with COVID-19. It's also important if we're working to communicate with our supervisors and coworkers. And fortunately with technology today, as you see, we can do that. We can stay in touch with the people. It's important to explain the situation. If you are at home with young kids, for example, it's often a good idea to spend the morning with your kids and the afternoon more focused on work activities. And this may be something you have to explain to your coworkers or your supervisors, that you may not be as available in the morning as you might be in the afternoon. Your work hours obviously are not going to be the same. Although we just did a survey of our employees, and we have about 180 employees, and we're pretty well all working remotely. And in our survey, we do these pulse surveys, 46% of our people told us they're being more efficient working from home than in the office, which was quite surprising. And a smaller percent, 5 to 8%, are having a lot of difficulties working from home and want to come back to the office as soon as possible. But it's important to sort of communicate and stay up to date, and even communicate about insignificant things. In our office, we have yoga classes that go on through Zoom. We have challenges that people are doing through Zoom. So just being in touch with people is so important for their spirits in these times. And of course, you have to make time for yourself. There's so many things that you can be doing for yourself. And especially in this world that we have today that's so connected, there's ways that we can interact with other people. So whether it's taking a bath or walking around the block or spending more time on meditation or yoga, reading a book. My wife takes meditation courses through Zoom on a regular basis now. Never did that before. She's doing yoga through Zoom. I'm reading books that I didn't have an opportunity since I travel and lecture so much in different places. I'm now at home, so I get to read books I wanted to read. Or just zone out. You can just stare out the window for a while and not feel guilty about it. And of course, some people like to play their computer games. So you have to make some positive time for yourself to get through this situation. Use your social support system. Stay in touch with family, with relatives, with people that you're close to, your friends. It's important to sort of keep up and see how they're coping and cheer each other up in one way or another. It just adds so much to the day. Staying informed. Now, this is an interesting one. It's really important that we know what's going on, right? That we follow the news to some extent. But what's dangerous is if we follow it too much. We don't want to overdose on the news. There's an interesting study some psychologists did recently looking at tragic events and people's staying informed about them. And they looked at major events that happened, bombings and other things. And they found that people who watched cable TV constantly all day long coped worse than people who were actually a witness of the bombing event, for example. It's amazing research, but the stress of being exposed to it over and over and over again, even through the media, can be bad for your health. And of course, beware of fake news. There's not all news is believable. What I try and do is limit the amount of news I get to an hour or less a day. So I know just enough about what's going on that's important, but I don't want to be overdosing on some of the stuff that's out there. It's also important to set boundaries. And this is really important if you're at home and you have your kids with you and you're trying to get work done. There's a lot of things you can do. I mean, it's ideal if you can designate your own work area with a door that closes and you can have privacy to do your work and have a separate area for your kids where they know that that's where they do their schoolwork or they keep up with their work or homework. If you don't have that luxury of a separate room and you set up an office with your workspace in one place and maybe your kids next to you, and you could use that as a modeling experience where you show your kids what it's like to work. One technique that people have been using is to use a timer and to say to your kids, look, we're going to work until this timer goes off, till the bell rings. Depending on the age of your kids, it could be 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes if they're older. You say, look, we're both going to work. You work at your desk, I work at my desk. And once this timer goes off, we'll have 15 minutes to play a game with each other. And it's important to reward them, for doing that, for coping with that and making it through it. And it's also important that we don't threaten them, that we don't say, get to work, or I'll take away your iPad or whatever, because that doesn't tend to work in the long run. So we have to come up with these processes or procedures for setting boundaries. It's also important to share responsibilities of childcare if your kids are with you, if there's another caretaker at home. I help with my grandchildren where we play through FaceTime. My granddaughter, who's 4 years old, dresses up as a princess and she builds a castle and she takes me through FaceTime into her castle. I'm the frog, she's the princess, and we'll play and we connect every day and try to keep occupied with each other. But your kids can also have play dates. I mean, we're really lucky with the technology that we have that enables us to do this kind of thing. There's another set of boundaries that we sometimes have to set. Some of us have those negative people in our lives that are always complaining, always worrying, always want to present us with the bad news. Well, we have to set boundaries on that because that's not healthy for us. We don't want to have to hear that. We don't want to have to listen to bad news all the time. It doesn't help. It doesn't change anything. So there's ways that we have to deal with them tactfully because they're often family members or relatives of some sort. So what we try and do is we empathize. We say, yes, it's bad. It sounds awful. That's great. You know what? I'm kind of busy right now. I'd like to take a break from the bad news and do something else. Sometimes we put on a do not disturb button. You can talk to me about anything but the pandemic. You can talk to me about any other thing. Later on, we'll talk about it. Or you set a time in the future. But we sometimes have to set boundaries between the people who just want to present us with news that is not helpful. And we want to do it in a tactful way that we can still have good relationships with these people. It's important for us to be realistic in times like this. We can't be too perfectionistic. We have to practice forgiveness. Things are going to happen. We may say things we don't want to say or don't mean to say. We have to be compassionate to ourselves. We have to accept the fact that we may lose our temper or do something, but accept the fact that we're in a difficult situation and these things happen, and accept the fact that we're doing the best we can in this kind of a situation. Healthy choice is so important. What you eat, getting enough sleep, getting some physical activity, and trying not to binge watch on TV. We don't really want to do that. Now, I guess for many of you, eating is limited. So even when you are able to eat in the evening, that we don't overeat or eat the wrong foods, that we try and eat foods that are healthy, that are good for us. Exercise, this has been an opportunity for me to get reacquainted with some of the equipment I have in my basement. We've become friends again. I haven't used some of those machines in a while, but it's really important that we exercise, that we try and maintain our physical health. Reconnect with things you enjoy. Again, I've gathered some things that people have shared with me, whether it's knitting, needlepoint, jigsaw puzzles, Sudoku, and of course for me, music. One of the amazing things about music right now, many of the world's greatest musicians or singers or entertainers, they can't perform. Their tours are all canceled. They're sitting at home, which is amazing, because what I've discovered is that many of them are giving workshops and classes because they're going as star crazy as we are with nothing to do. So I've connected with some of the world's leading saxophone players who are giving lessons right now. I've connected with Charlie Deschamps, who's a saxophone player for the rock and roll group Hall & Oates, and we've been communicating, and he's been showing me things. And the saxophone player for Rod Stewart, she's been helping out in learning new things. And there's websites like, I think it's called artistworks.com, where you can go and take piano lessons or guitar lessons or certain instruments. But again, some of these world famous musicians who are sitting at home without a lot of things to do. So this is an amazing opportunity for many of us who have hobbies like music, or if you're into singing, to really develop it and work on those skills. For some people, it's gardening. So there's any number of things that you can find that you enjoyed when you were younger, and you can do them again, because now you've probably said many times, if only I had the time to do this. And guess what? We've got the time. It's also a way for us to help in the community. Some people I know have been helping with food banks, with delivering food, with preparing food. It's good to get your kids involved in helping others. Helping others is a great way for helping yourself. So if we can do things that help others, that's appreciated by many different people. Getting back to challenge. So seeing this pandemic as a challenge. So there's again, an opportunity for learning. There's so many courses. There's Udemy and other websites where you can take courses in all sorts of things, from computer programming to art skills to whatever. So maybe you can take a course or two, learn a new language. Again, there's an opportunity there for many of us. And of course, there's family time that we weren't spending before because we were working too much, that we can now spend with our families. And yes, there's nothing wrong with Netflix or Apple TV or Prime or whatever. There's some good documentaries, there's some good movies, some good TV shows. Nothing wrong with spending time on it. Just don't overdose. Just don't go too crazy watching the tube. And here's one that just came to me this past week. Get in touch with someone that you haven't been in touch with for a long time. I had a phone call this week from somebody I knew as a graduate student 40 years ago. He's now a psychologist, retired in California. And, he's sitting at home like the rest of us without, looking for things to do. And he decided to go through his old boxes of things. And he found some old photographs from grad school from 40 years ago, and just decided on a whim to start tracking down and phoning us as classmates and seeing how we're doing. I thought that was amazing. And then he emailed me some of the pictures. I can't believe how I looked back then. But he emailed us the pictures. We had a great chat on who we keep up with and who we've seen. So this is an amazing opportunity to connect with people from your past and just, relive some of those memories and see how they're doing. Be kind to yourself. pay attention to the things you say to yourself. Don't be too negative on yourself, and don't over-criticize yourself. Finally, humor. We can never get enough humor, right? Here's a gentleman who decides at this time he doesn't want to be rescued because it's not a good time to go back to civilization. We can find humor in many situations. And of course, this is probably as good a situation as any, to see if there's anything we can laugh about that can keep our spirits up and help us get through this challenging pandemic. And with that, I think our time is up, our clock is up, and our time is up. And I think we're going to be all set and ready to have some questions and interaction. And I'm really thank you for your attention. And I hand it back to you, Reem.
Thank you so much, Dr. Steve. I will be reflecting at the end. This has been truly, truly insightful. Thank you so much. Before we go to the Q&A, you will see a quick poll of some questions. If you can answer them, it will take you a minute or less. And then we have plenty of questions. Actually have very, very good questions. And there's some of the questions are really deep. So
Okay.
can't wait to go into them. Yes. All right, let's start. First of all, this question is from Al Hanouf, and she's asking how to not let other people affect my emotions.
Okay. So again, there's two things here. One is to nicely set a boundary between the fact that letting them know that you don't want to talk about this right now. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about, and you can suggest something that maybe is something that you both like. We can talk about music, gardening, some other subject. So by moving the subject over, or some people you just want to not see them, right? You want to avoid them. So you may say to them, look, I will see you or talk to you tomorrow. I have a lot of things to do today. We'll get back in touch in a day or so. So you have to be able to set those boundaries and find a nice way to let them know that it's not helpful or it's not possible for you to see them right now.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. There's another question from Andrian, and he's saying, can there be drawn certain correlation between each of the 3 C's of hardiness with certain elements, subscales of EQI 2.0?
Exactly, yes. In our hardiness book, we actually include those. There are some really good correlations. There's significant correlations. I won't go through all 15 of them now, but you can see some of them make more sense, like stress tolerance clearly is related more directly to hardiness. So the stress items are more highly correlated to the hardiness items, especially when it comes to challenge. People who are strong in stress tolerance, for example, are good at challenge because they try and come up with ways to problem solve, to deal with the stressful situation. So yes, we've done some research on that, and we've summarized some of those correlations.
Thank you. And this is a question, and it's even been repeated in the chat, how to know my EQI score, how to measure my emotional intelligence and my hardiness score as well.
So those are tools that we've developed. So the EQI, as Reem has there available, is an online questionnaire screener that takes maybe 20-25 minutes, available in English and Arabic. The hardiness likewise is a questionnaire done online. It's shorter, takes maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and they come up with a report looking at your strengths, the areas that you're really strong in, and it also outlines some of the challenges and helps you start to deal with the challenges. It's the first step towards maybe working with a coach or just understanding what you can do to improve in those areas.
Thank you. And if I may, Dr. Steve, to also add that we do provide the assessments as the distributor. We do provide the EQI 2.0 and 360, as well as the hardness assessment. We would be happy to for you to approach us. And the next question is, how would I know that I have the ability to identify the emotions on the person in front of me and I know I am right?
Well, that's something that takes experience, right? So what we find is when we train people in empathy, which is really, that refers to empathy, that ability to read other people's emotions, some people are really good at it, and we tend to know they're good at it because they've gotten feedback all along. Say, well, how did you know that that's how I felt? Or, so they've had feedback indicating that they've been pretty good at identifying other people's emotions. As well, it's something that we can train. We train people how to read other people's emotions, how to be better at identifying what somebody's really feeling or thinking, as opposed to what they, we say, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. But they're not really fine. That there's something deeper or something that concerns them. So that's what empathy is about. And you get to know through experience, through life experience, through the people you're with. And if you want to practice it, if you have someone you're close to, whether it's your partner or a close friend, sit and have a conversation about something. It could be anything. It could be about a movie, and try and guess how they feel about it and see how often you're right. You both saw the same TV show and you say, oh, I bet you liked such and such a character was your favorite character. And they may say, yeah, how did you know? Or they'll say, no, I felt better about a different character. So you can test yourself with a close friend just to see how good you are at reading their emotions and what they seem to like or dislike.
Yeah, thank you. The next question is, what secondary skills would a person with high EI need to be able to focus their energy productively?
What was the second word?
What secondary skills?
Secondary skills.
Secondary skills, yeah.
Wow. the secondary skills. Well, I guess we were saying the emotional intelligence skills are the primary skills, or one would be first, one would be second. It really would depend on the situation, in terms of motivation. Usually we try and find a purpose, trying to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. So we try to look at the big picture, what we refer to as commitment in Hardiness terms. And once we sort of understand why we're doing it and what the purpose of it is, then we can use the various emotions of excitement, of passion. Those are the emotions that drive you forward, not emotions like fear or, shame. Those emotions don't really move us forward. There's been a lot of research on these emotions and which ones are constructive versus destructive. And it's usually, in terms of motivating yourself or getting something done, it's usually the positive emotions that do it, not the negative emotions. So it's passion, being pride. Pride is a good one. I'm really proud. I'm proud of my team. We have the best team. We're the number one swim team in the country. So we're proud of each other, and that's motivating. Whereas if someone says, if you don't win that swim meet, we're going to demote you, or we're going to take you off the team. That's not a good way to do it. It's not, in the long term, it's not motivating.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Peter is asking, do you find that some cultures are more hardy than others?
That's a really good question. And that's the kind of research that we're looking at now. We've done that with emotional intelligence. And in my book, The EQ Leader, we've documented different countries and how they relate on the different emotional skills. And there are significant changes. Obviously some countries, people are more assertive than in other countries. In the Western countries, people are more assertive than maybe in Oriental countries, where people are not quite as assertive, aren't as forthcoming. You think of Americans who tell you right away what they think and feel, whereas other countries hold back a lot, are more reserved. With hardiness, we're just embarking on that international research where we're looking across countries to see if there are differences. So that's a great question. And maybe I'll come back in a year or so and we'll have a good answer for that.
Oh, I look forward to that. Hassam is asking EI how much of its attributes are nature, and how much are nurtured.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we don't know for sure on that, but from what we've seen, we can speculate, from again, some of the research that maybe somewhere between 25 to 35, 40% maybe we're kind of born with, or it comes naturally, and the rest of it we can develop. We can all develop it to some degree. It's like an elastic band, right? Where you can stretch it so much, and not every band is the same. Some stretch more than others. And we find that with emotional intelligence. Some people, they just come out very social, very good at it. I think of my own granddaughter. She was social from age 2, age 3, and even now she's so good at managing other people. She knows how to put me in my place or to do whatever, but in a kind of a nice way. And it's almost kind of natural. Whereas other people have a challenging time. They don't get along well with others, or they get picked on or whatever because they don't show the right kind of skill sets. So I guess roughly between 20, 30, 35%, I would think just comes with the package.
Okay. There's another question says, how can I control my anger if someone tells me something not good? Controlling anger, that's a repetitive one.
That's a big one. So what do we do? Well, I guess, part of it, and it's a skill set that takes some training. I mean, the very quick and instant way is to stop, close your eyes, hold your breath, count to 10. That's kind of the quick, easy answer to managing anger. But the longer term, the more strategic solution is more involved. It really means looking at the situation totally differently, to reevaluate what they're saying to you. And this takes practice. You're not going to do this one-off just tomorrow, but it means taking a different mindset, a different attitude towards what they're saying. So you look at what they're saying at you, well, maybe insulting or whatever, you interpret it differently. Instead of saying, how dare this person insult me? You say to yourself, boy, this is a very stupid person. Why should I treat this person seriously? Right? So you have a different mindset. You look at that person in a completely different way, and you say, why should I upset myself over an idiot, or over somebody who's not very respectable, or who I don't like, or I don't trust. So if you learn to change your mindset in that way, you won't be bothered by it. You may even laugh at it. We've taught people who are triggered by certain things to turn it around and make a joke out of it. And that sometimes gets the other person really upset. And then you're even happier, right? Because the person who tried to upset you ends up being the one who's upset. So if you learn these skills, they can be very powerful in helping you deal with difficult people.
Okay. There's 2 questions that is asking about how to go from a fixed to growth mindset. Is there any best tips about that?
There's a lot. So, my first recommendation is to get Carol Dweck's book. It's called Mindset. She outlines it really well and covers a variety of situations: school, work, home, all kinds of things. So there's tons of things in her book, but just some examples. One thing, again, is asking questions. Instead of running away or shutting down when there's a challenge, you say, well, I don't like math, but you know what? What could I learn from trying this problem? So just stop and asking questions, being curious. That can lead you to a more growth mindset. Not rejecting things out of hand. Someone asks you to try something or look at something, and instead of just saying, no, I don't like that, I don't like those things, I don't like sports, I don't like whatever, saying, okay, maybe there's something there I could learn from. Where can I start? So that's what it really involves in a nutshell. But in her book, there are many, many techniques on how to develop the growth mindset.
Great. And the next is, what is the relation between EQI and our mindsets?
Yeah, well, we did, again, in my hardiness book, we did a study looking at the relationship between EQI, hardiness, and mindset. And it was pretty interesting. Actually, I think hardiness commitment was the most related and was even stronger in predicting work effectiveness. We were interested in work satisfaction, work effectiveness, how effective are you at work? And it only makes sense. People high in commitment, that sort of mindset, where I love what I do, I believe so much in what I do, obviously they're going to be more effective at it, right? If I'm working at a fast food restaurant and I'm just there for a paycheck, chances aren't really good that I'm going to go all out and really love my job. I'll do what they tell me to do because I need to for the job. But if you look at people who do things that they're passionate about, I love the work I do. I travel the world talking about these topics, and I just love doing it so much that you can see that we keep pushing the envelope and doing new things and learning more. And it's because of that commitment. And commitment is so important, having purpose. And that's why I always try and get people, no matter where you work or what you do, to try and develop purpose in your work. What are you doing to improve the world or the community? And if you can find that bit of what you do, even if you're working in shipping in a manufacturing industry, you're helping people in the world get those goods, especially today, right? If you're shipping out life-saving equipment today, you are important. You've got a significant role. So it's really important. They're really highly correlated, that ability to have that mindset, that commitment mindset, and be productive and be happier with your work as well.
Beautiful. There's a question from Mohammed that he's speaking about. He took his assessment a couple of months ago for the EQI and scoring high in self-actualization but low in self-awareness. And he's saying, I'm thinking that is one that if one is self-actualized must high, and the other in emotional self-awareness is low, how can this be?
That's an interesting combination. So what that means is that you're really going after things, trying to improve and learn new things and move forward, but you're not sure really what's right for you. You may be trying too many different things. Being self-aware is really knowing yourself, knowing what's really important for you, where your heart really lies, right? And maybe, your self-actualization may not have the right direction, but once you find that self-awareness, when you have that self-awareness, that can be the compass to your self-actualization. So you may be able to be better focused in what you're trying to improve in yourself. So I think it would be a great idea to learn to be more self-aware. It also helps you navigate people better. You may be doing things or saying things that maybe don't rub people the right way and you're not aware of it. So it's a good idea to build that self-awareness. So you're more grounded. You have a better sense of where you are, what you're about, what you can contribute. So it's great that you're self-actualizing. You've got that need to learn. You want to improve yourself. But I think it's more about focusing it now, finding out who you are and what you really see in life and what you really want, and moving in that direction. And I think that might help you be even happier.
Thank you. Okay. And the next is, according to the uncertainty we are facing now, how to prepare myself and my surroundings for tomorrow.
For tomorrow, yeah. Tomorrow's going to be different. I mean, I think that's something that we know. So again, I go back to flexibility and adaptability. Be prepared for change. And there's changes in all different aspects of our lives. In our work life, we're becoming more digital, right? So get used to Zoom, get used to these kinds of events. Be open to learning, because we're going to have to adapt new ways of doing things. be ready, to enter a world where we maybe have to protect ourselves. We have to social distance for a while. Life is going to be different. So understanding that, accepting that, being flexible will help you do it a lot better. It'll help you manage or navigate this new world, because none of us know what we're heading into. We don't know if the thing is going to be finished once and for all, like SARS, in a couple of weeks or not, or whether it's going to rebound and come back and hit us again in a couple of weeks, or maybe next fall or winter. We really don't know. So we have to just do the best we can with what we know. And that's why I stress all the tactical points I said before. Be good to yourself, learn things, self-actualize, do those things you can, and just be prepared for change and try and adapt to that change. Listen, I'm doing Zoom every day now, and I've used Zoom before. I've been using it actually for a few years. Zoom was small when I started using it. They used to phone me to try and make me a bigger customer. Now they're so big, they don't even know who I am anymore. But, so I've been trying to get accustomed to this technology for quite a long time. And I've seen it, get better and better. And now especially it's exploded as a result of the pandemic. But be ready for change. I think that's the main thing. And don't be afraid of the change. Try and see what you can learn from the change. And then I think you'll do well.
I think following such an important answer is maybe what would be the best way to develop EI skills, or our EI skills?
Well, you've got Reem right here. So the best way is coaching. Of all the ways, we've been looking at training and self-reading and online reading. The best way really, and I guess that's the business Reem is in, is having a good coach. We've got actually documented research, peer-reviewed research, not done by us, but done by other groups, that have shown that when you have control group, and they actually use EQ Edge, use one of my books in their research as a guide for the coaching process over 10 months or 12 months, they found significant improvements in people's EI, not just in their EI, but in their effectiveness at work, their ability to get along with people, to deal in a team, in a group. So I think coaching is one real solid way. You have a good coach, the chances are you're going to develop these skills and get pretty good at them.
Yes, thank you. And Arif is asking, how are you experiencing hardiness in the impact of organization today?
Me personally, is that a personal question? It's a challenging situation. And again, I meet with a number of organizations, even during this pandemic. I'm involved in some CEO groups and executive groups. So I've been hearing from a lot of different people. How we manage it is largely what I've been talking about for the last hour, doing the things that I do. Music has been so helpful for me. Taking a break from some of the work stuff, although I love my work, as I hope you can tell. I've been doing this work for many years, and it's just every day is exciting for me. So having that sense of purpose just builds, regardless of what's going on around me, or seeing things as new opportunities. And with the pandemic, again, as you see right here today, I get more and more of these invitations to do more of these webinars. So, there's a silver lining to every cloud. So the hardiness part of it is being able to see these opportunities. We are, like many people I know, or everyone I'm talking to, except maybe the toilet paper industry, it's costing us financially. There are a few people that are gaining, and Amazon is going through the roof. Zoom is going through the roof. We see some of our sales going down as a result of this, but I'm not going to spend my time worrying about that. We're planning and preparing for tomorrow. We have all of our people working. We've not let anybody go, and we're building up new products. We're building up parts of our infrastructure. We see this as a time to sort of step back, think, plan, get ready for when we're out of this, because we all know we're going to get out of this. And we did this in 2008 during the last recession. We didn't let anybody go. We planned, we worked on new products, and when the recession was over, we were gangbusters. We just came out of the floodgates. And I'm hoping that that happens again, that we've kept everybody working and busy. We have lots of activities going on. If you're on LinkedIn or see any of our staff, they're busy. They got videos going on. They got all kinds of stuff on how to deal with the pandemic, what to do after the pandemic. So we're all busy. And I think the Hardiness really helps with that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Steven. One last question that we find it to be repetitive. Personally, I hear this question a lot. And here's it also has been asked here. How can we hide our emotions?
Well, maybe we don't have to really hide our emotions. Maybe it's normal to be scared, to be afraid, to be upset. And we can express it. We don't have to go crazy. We don't have to go sobbing and crying in front of everybody. But we can express the fact that this is a difficult time. I'm going through stress right now. We can express that without overdoing it. We don't have to really hide that. I mean, maybe we don't want our kids to know we're scared, but maybe we want them to know that we're challenged, that it's difficult. They can know that this is not an easy time for you without going into a lot of great detail. But, hiding emotions is not great for you psychologically. They, even in good times, they've done a lot of the research on hiding emotions has been in the retail business, where people are forced to smile and be nice to customers, even when the customers are rude. And studying that hiding of emotions, or they call it emotional acting, has not been good. It wears people down. It's bad for them psychologically. It's much better if they're honest and transparent with people. So the customer isn't always right, was the moral of the story. So sometimes you're upset with what somebody did, and you can let them know that you don't appreciate that kind of behavior. We don't accept that. And for you to be honest about your emotions might, in the long run, be better for your mental health. Just to let go and say, I'm upset. I mean, I'm finding this tough to deal with, and share that with someone that you trust. Let them know that. Okay.
Well, that takes a lot of courage. Dr. Steve, I really cannot begin to tell you how enjoyable, insightful, amazing this talk was. We are honored to have you here tonight. We're grateful, and the chat is, they are really happy with all the information, valuable information that they have received today, and we all received today. Truly, thank you so much for your valuable time and giving us from your valuable time and sharing with us. We're truly grateful. Thank you so much, Dr. Steve.
Thanks for having me, and good luck, and be good for all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for being with us tonight and for attending with us. Inshallah, this recording will be also available on our YouTube channel. Personally, I will go and watch it again and again. I find it to be very insightful, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you, everyone.